Thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. We've got a special promo, the Journal Live, with Chris Green and Sam Smith. Here is Sam.
Thanks, Thane. My name is Sam Smith. I'm the Director of Communications for the Kansas Leadership Center, and I'm here with Chris Green, Managing Editor of the Journal, and we're going to do a little uh, preview of the upcoming Journal Live event. This is a Journal Talks event. Chris, we've had lots of journal discussions. I'm familiar with the magazine launch events. I understand you have something a little bit different in mind for this coming installment of Journal Talks next Wednesday. Can you tell us how this event will be different from the others?
I'm really excited, Sam, for this upcoming event because it'll give us a chance to try out a new format for these discussions that are based upon journal stories. And so we'll be going live at 1 p.m. on Wednesday, February 24th, with 5 guests to talk about childcare and the efforts to increase it in the city of Lindsborg. Joining us will be Kansas Lieutenant Governor David Toland, Dr. Elizabeth Mock of Bethany College, Lucas Neese, who's the Assistant City Administrator in Lindsborg, Jeremy Feit, who is the director of the Hilltop Child Development Center in Lawrence, and Becky Tanner, who's a journal correspondent who spent a lot of time writing the story about how Lindsborg is trying to make progress on childcare, which is something affects a lot of communities, and they're doing it through the lens of how do we promote economic growth in our community. And it's not jobs that are the problem in Lindsborg. They have plenty of those, but they don't have enough childcare to have the workers come in. And so we're going to talk about how they're trying to solve that problem.
Mm-hmm. And it was a really interesting story, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how they were able to secure the means for I understand there's a new facility that's going to be built, and that's going to address some of the challenges, some of the shortfall. How were they able to secure funding for that effort?
Well, on the basis of Becky's story, that's something they're still working on. I think what's interesting about the Lindsborg story is how they had to kind of engage a process. They found this out through a survey that they did through the community, and then they had to try to engage these different factions because in any community there are factions of people who need childcare and then factions of people who don't need childcare. And there are also people who automatically and easily see why it's important for their community to grow. And then there are other people who are sort of more skeptical about can rural communities grow at a time when pretty much the narrative that we have of is decline. And so they are basically in the process of fundraising and have a really significant commitment for this new child care center that they're building. But it's not just about money and not just about childcare. I think it's also about mobilizing their community to make progress on a really difficult issue. And I would love to hear more about sort of their process when we talk on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, it's a great lineup of guests, and one of the questions that I had in mind as I read the article is it mentions some of the different factions or people that were not so enthusiastic or couldn't see the need for childcare as directly. But what I didn't get from the article necessarily was a sense of opposition to it, or what are the different factions that were engaged to get this many people involved. Like, I know there's some partners, but I think factions are a little bit more complicated than just a few partners. Can you give us a taste of what we might hear on Wednesday about that? How did they manage to mobilize the community of different factions on this issue?
Well, that's something I'd like to get into a lot more with Lucas and Dr. Mock. I think employers are playing a key role in supporting this effort because they need workers. They need really talented people to come in and work at their companies and businesses and organizations. And so I think what we'll hear is that it's that support from the business community. One of the cool things about that I read in that story was about a bank official even sponsoring a daycare in their house to help serve the community. So it just sort of shows how engaged the business community is in this issue. And I think how important like having that one particular faction on board is for making progress. Like you mean you're right. It can't just be the city or it can't just be the parents. Like there have to be some people who see the advantages to progress that maybe aren't like directly affected by it, but can see the indirect benefits from engaging in trying to solve this challenge that's kind of holding back the community's growth. They want to be, a city of several thousand more people, and to get there, they know that they can't do it without uh, increasing the amount of childcare that's available.
Right, right. And as you say, this might be a case where it's not that there are lots of people actively opposing something like this, but it's going to take more than just one interest group to push something like this through, because it is going to require a lot of investment from the community. And so it requires a number of people who are in different spheres of the community to come together and see that this is an overriding issue that affects them all.
Yeah, and I think in terms of like opposition, like I think like that's just like in any community, like people who are happy with the status quo, like you really have to like make a good argument for them to change or do things differently. Like Lindsborg is a unique community in terms of like the educational opportunities, having a university, having lots of connection to the arts, having this deep history of drawing people into the community through things like the Messiah that's put on annually. So there are just a lot of resources and assets, and I think you could say it's a successful community. And getting people to see a different path to being more successful is that's a leadership challenge too. And it'll be interesting to hear more about like how do you energize others.
Right.
When you can already look at a track record that points to being a pretty effective place.
So what do you think? What do you think will come out of Wednesday with regards to what can other cities take away, other communities take away from this? How can Lindsborg be a model? What do you think we're going to hear on Wednesday that will help clarify that issue?
I think like one thing we'll hear is like reason to hope. Like there are so many communities that deal with this issue, and it can seem kind of intractable and kind of really like, how do you make something like this move? Like it seems something forced upon you rather than something you can control. And I think what we'll hear is that, well, that's the case to some extent. Like there are things you can do. You can mobilize people, you can work, you can try new things and try experiments and build a community in a direction to try and make a difference on this issue with the goal of improving the overall community. So I think you'll hear hope. And I think like the Lindsborg community wants really wants to be an example for other parts of the state, other parts of the country. They're learning from other places and hoping to spread that knowledge along. So I think that's one of the reasons they wanted to be a part of the story and wanted to be a part of this discussion.
That's great. And finally, like this, we're not going to have a lot of time for a small group discussion like we've had with our other journal launch events. What do you think the advantages are of just having a shorter discussion among experts that will be the features of this particular kind of journal talk?
I think one advantage is that you really get to hear in depth from the panelist more. You get to hear a wide variety of perspectives. You'll get a chance to ask questions in the chat, to make comments there. And so it's a chance to sort of like, as an audience member, like stimulate your thinking. We're not going to ask you to like sit down and talk about it like you might at a normal journal launch event. But it will give you an opportunity to just sort of like try out a new idea or try out thinking about different things that maybe you haven't thought about before in a pretty low risk, low commitment kind of way that I think also has value. Just hopefully 45 minutes of really great learning and expanding horizons and hearing from people talking about something cool that's going on in a Kansas community, which I think can just be really refreshing to hear.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great opportunity for our audiences to engage with this topic, and it is an important issue for Kansas, as we know. And I think that's great. I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks, Chris. Anything else you want to tell our listeners or watchers about this event?
We'll look forward to seeing you at 1 p.m. on Wednesday, February 24th for a discussion about nurturing prosperity through childcare in Lindsborg. And looking forward to seeing you for the very first Journal Live event. And I think it'll be a good one.
And it'll be streaming from our Facebook page and from our YouTube page simultaneously. And you can comment, and we'll be monitoring the chats on both of those platforms. Thanks, Chris.
Yes, thanks so much, Sam.